Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the OT Lifestyle Movement Podcast. I'm Rhiannon Crisp, occupational therapist, personal trainer, and founder of OTLifestyleMovement.com. Today we're talking all about mindfulness. And the more that I dive into my own personal journey and personal development, and the more that I listen to the health gurus who inspire me, the more I'm reminded of how beneficial meditation and mindfulness is for me. So today we're diving deep into this topic, and you will probably benefit from it just like me from a personal perspective, but also from the lens of an occupational therapist working with clients. Today we are talking with Sarah Good. Sarah is an occupational therapist and mindfulness teacher based in Canada. She has been working as an OT for over 18 years. Sarah is passionate about bringing mindfulness to her life, her work, and other occupational therapists. She is the founder of Sarah Good Occupational Therapy, where she enables people living with pain, sleep challenges, and mental health issues to live fuller lives. She also supports OTs who want to weave mindfulness into their OT practice. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Rhiannon. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you here, Sarah. I'm keen to dive into this topic and soak up all your wisdom and knowledge because, as I said, it is something that I'm looking into personally. And I think we all go through this personal development stage, right, where we, and part of the process is mindfulness, is becoming aware of our actions and our thoughts and our feelings. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking this a little bit more. But before we do, like on every episode, we kind of backtrack, and I want to jump in that time capsule. And I'd love it if you could take us back to just the beginning, just to give us a bit of history about who you are, how you came to do the work that you're doing today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, it would go way back. I worked at a summer camp with kids with disabilities, and that's where I was introduced to the concept of occupational therapy. And years later, went on to be an occupational therapist. And my first job was in palliative care, and it was a wonderful job, but quite emotionally and mentally and physically taxing. And as I worked in that job, I started reading some books by John Kabat-Zinn, and sort of got introduced to the concept of mindfulness. And at that time, there weren't a lot of mindfulness courses. Certainly there weren't online programs that I was aware of, or that I even knew about. And that would have been 2002. And so I got some CDs, and I would go down to there was a chapel in our hospital. And so at my lunch break, I would go and practice some of the more formal meditations. So for me, that was kind of the start of working with people with pain, and as well my own personal practice of mindfulness. And at that point, I certainly wouldn't have shared the mindfulness explicitly with any clients. It was more about keeping my own equanimity and managing, my own emotions and energy, and having something to really take care of myself. It varied how much time. Sometimes it was 5 minutes, sometimes it was 20 minutes, depending on how long I could get away from the hospital floor for. But to have that in the middle of the day. So that was kind of my more formal practice that I started with. And then, I had kids and got a little less consistent in it, for sure. And then I developed a condition, and I was at the physiotherapist, and she said, it was a pain condition. She said, have you ever thought of trying mindfulness? I thought, well, yeah, I used to do that all the time. I should go back and do that. And at that point, was probably around 2010. At that point, I went and started looking at it again, and looked at it a bit as an OT, and realized that over the course of that time, just the research and materials, and it all bloomed or blossomed or expanded, exploded. So I saw that. So I started really becoming more intentional about setting myself time for a mindfulness meditation for some time each day, for my own health. And then as I started to get more into that myself, I started introducing it to my clients, not in a teaching way, because at that point I would just, so by that point I worked I'd actually worked in schools and taken some time off the kids. And then I was working in the community at that point with adults. And I started introducing them to it. So not necessarily teaching them, but suggesting books, suggesting resources, referring them to a local course. And then I made the jump to my own private practice 7 years ago. And at that point decided to train to become a mindfulness meditation teacher at that point. And so I trained at the Ottawa Mindfulness Clinic, where then I started teaching a course there for people with pain and really integrating it much more into my client work at that point.
I love that. And I find it so interesting that the physio recommended mindfulness. I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah,
in my physio, first she started off with, she'd have the physio exercises, and she'd have like one of the physio papers, they give you a little handout on diaphragmatic breathing. I was like, oh, right. Okay. And then it kind of went, that's when it kind of came up. Yeah. Just ways to calm the nervous system.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we can see how well, that integrates into OT as well. And we can dive into that a bit later. First, I'd like to just set the scene with mindfulness and what exactly is it? Because it is a buzzword right now, right? Like so many people are saying mindfulness, meditation, like being present in the moment. But I'd love to get your definition and what you've come to understand as what mindfulness actually is.
Yeah, great questions. So taking the first of what I decide, or I use a definition of mindfulness for myself and that I share with my clients. So I like to explain that mindfulness has three parts. So intention, attention, and attitude. So the intention is, what am I choosing to focus on right now? And the attention is, where am I actually focusing? And the attitude is, how am I talking to myself, or how am I treating myself when those things aren't aligned? So if I'm intending to listen to my kid and my mind's wandering, then I want to gently bring myself back without giving myself too hard a time about that. So the intention would be, listen to my child. The attention might be on anything, what I need to do later. And then the attitude is, okay, come back. This is where I am right now, right? And that's, I find, as I get more insight into other people's, self-talk, I realize a lot of us speak pretty harshly to ourselves when we're not focusing on what we think we should be. So that's the attitude part. So then I would say, because you're right, it is used as a buzzword a lot, and I think it's helpful sometimes to define it as, I say that there's big M mindfulness, like capital M, and then lowercase m mindfulness. And in my mind, big M mindfulness would be the formal practices that I do. So if I'm choosing to sit down or lie down and or walk and do a formal practice, that to me is the big M mindfulness. That would be a meditation as well. Whereas the lowercase mindfulness would be, am I able to pay attention to the present moment in my day-to-day activities as I'm going about whatever it is I want to do in the day. And that's where it really, I think, ties in well to occupation. Whatever's occupying my time, can my mind be on that?
I love that. And you're so right, because at any given moment, our attention is being drawn to other things. And whether that is what we have to do in 10 minutes time, or what our kid's doing, or whatever's distracting us over in the corner over there, it can be really hard to zone in and just focus on that occupation that, is in front of us right at that time. And two, the world is so noisy. It's so hard to cut through that noise and just to, and just to focus and bring our awareness and our attention to what it is that we're doing. And I think in order to develop and to access, parts of our intuition, and to experience more joy and connectedness with the moment and with people around us, we need to have this level of awareness. But it's hard. Like, it's so much easier said than done, right? Like, it's so easy to say, pay attention to what you're doing. But in the moment, our minds are always drifting off. So it is such a practice that we do need to learn.
Absolutely. And we're set up as humans as threat receptors. Like we're always looking for threats. And I will say this to my clients a lot, because the majority of my clients are first responders or young military veterans, healthcare providers, right? So on top of us just being humans, as healthcare providers, we are trained to look for the danger, look for the challenge that might be arising. So we are both biologically, ready to look for danger, and as professionals, we're constantly looking out for what might be a challenge. So yeah, we are bouncing around a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And when you talk about the big M meditation and mindfulness and the little M mindfulness, I wanted to sort of look at that, take a closer look. So meditation and mindfulness too are different things. And what I'm hearing you say is with the big M meditation, as you describe it, mindfulness. Oh my gosh, I'm getting really confused here. The big M mindfulness is more like meditation, is that formal practice where you're consciously really focusing on nothing. Whereas the little M mindfulness is focusing on something, which is that something in front of you. Is that right?
So yeah, good question. I'm going to bring that in a couple ways. Yeah. So first of all, I will say that in mindfulness, you're never focusing on nothing. There's something you're focusing on, right? So that's the intention. So it's never about, and mindfulness meditation is never about emptying your mind and thinking of nothing. So if the focus is the breath, then it's about coming back to that. So it's not, there's going to be something to pay attention to. Whether it's the big M, kind of the more formal practice, or the less formal. And I guess I'll clarify too, because this is a question I get a lot, is what's the difference between mindfulness and meditation? Yes. Or what's the similarity, or are they interchangeable? So meditation is a broad term, and there are a lot of types of meditation. Most religious faiths and various traditions have some form of meditation involved in them. And then mindfulness can be one type of that meditation. And it's the type that I use myself and I use in my practice, partly because it's something that has been there's a lot of evidence, it's been well researched in the Western healthcare system, and it is a secular interpretation of that. Now, if I'm working with a client who has a faith background that involves some religion with a meditation or prayer practice, then that's what that's what they can work into the day. They don't need to learn a new practice necessarily, but they may need help prioritizing and scheduling that practice. So that's kind of the meditation part. So that would be that when I talked about the big M mindfulness, for lack of a better term there, that would be kind of the mindfulness meditation. Whereas if I am going about doing a client visit or cooking my meal or eating my meal mindfully, that's not a meditation per se in my mind. That's more of how I'm approaching it. So that would be, I guess, another OT way of saying this is mindfulness can be an occupation, or it can be a lens through which we see other occupations. So if I am I've got my meditation stool and such over here, if I'm pulling my meditation stool out and sitting down, I would say at that moment, my occupation is mindfulness. Whereas if I am approaching the cutting up of vegetables as I make dinner, and my intention is just to focus on what I'm cooking and not listen to the news and not do other things, I might be approaching cooking dinner mindfully.
Yes. Thank you for that explanation. And it makes a lot of sense to me now, because I didn't realize that there was such thing called mindfulness meditation. I thought there was meditation and mindfulness, and they were completely separate and not interchangeable. So yeah, that really clarifies things. And I think, it's much easier to start with just being mindful in our occupations rather than, setting aside, for me, for example, I'd find it a lot harder to carve out that time in my day to sit. And I find it hard to sit as well. to sit and practice mindfulness meditation, as opposed to being mindful in the present moment and paying attention and noticing whatever it is that I'm doing and being fully present in that. Do you find that with clients that you work with, that that's sort of like the stepping stone, that you start with mindfulness and then work up to mindfulness meditation?
You can go either way. It's very personal. So in a way, mindfulness meditation is an opportunity for us to kind of strengthen our mindfulness muscles, so to speak. So some people, that's really needs to be the first step. And so for me, I don't practice mindfulness meditation because the 20 minutes I do it is so, phenomenal, but it helps me throughout the rest of the day be more mindful of in my other occupations. So it can go that way, where it's really helpful for people to have more formal, and it doesn't need to be 20 minutes. I do 2-minute meditations with people. So it can be really helpful for some people to have that more formal practice to get them started. And then, if we do a more formal eating meditation, where I'll lead someone through that, and then they might be able to, when they're eating later that day, just take a mindful bite more easily because we've already done that formal meditation. Whereas other people, the idea of sitting in meditation just gives them the heebie-jeebies and stresses them out right away. So then the idea might be, well, can you pick one thing in your day that you can bring mindful attention to for this week? So maybe every time you wash your hands, or every time you brush your teeth or brush your hair, something short. And then a person could work up to, when they go for their daily run, they're really just going to focus on the daily run. They're not going to be going through the plans for the whole day, but they're going to really focus in on just the experience of the run and the sensory experience of that. So it's very personal, and that's why, as OTs, I think this is where we come into helping people figure out how best to approach and scale that, or make stepping stones that are appropriate.
And so, say for example, for the runner, someone wants to focus in and be mindful on their run. What will they be noticing? What are they being aware of in that moment? And how do we try and block out those thoughts that are coming to the forefront?
Yeah, so if somebody really wanted to bring, and I came up with the example of running, but it's going to be a whole lot easier if they're going a bit more slowly to start. So one thing would be, if somebody really wanted to do that, not having their phone with them, not having earbuds in, right? Obviously, the being more aware of what's going on. And then I would suggest probably to start outside, maybe really taking a look around, getting familiar with what the sky looks like today, what the weather's like, taking a few deep breaths on the front lawn, then starting to walk, taking some steps and just really noticing the feel of the feet, each time your foot hits the ground, and really noticing that. And then if that becomes something you can attend to, then speeding up, but keeping that focus on the feet each time they hit the ground. And that's the intention. Then the attention's going to wander. And it's like a spoke of a wheel. So you got the middle of the bicycle wheel, and then you got all the spokes going out, right? So the intention is that middle part. And you're focusing on the feeling of your feet hitting the ground each time. But then our attention goes off on all these different directions. And then the key is, when we notice we're off on one of these spokes, is to bring it back before we hit the whole tire and just spend the rest of our run going around on the tire instead of in the center. So it's the practice is coming back. That's the practice. Our minds are going to wander.
Yes, I know, because life is busy and there's so many things on our to-do list. and
even if there aren't, a lot of clients I work with have truly nothing on their to-do list and nothing in their day. And their minds still wander, right? Yeah.
And so what do you say, like, what can they do, like, in that moment when those thoughts come up? And it could be any thoughts. It could be, thoughts about themselves and, negative self-talk. I'm not good enough. I'm not fit enough. I'm not fast enough. Or it could be, future planning, all the things I've got to do, and I shouldn't be doing this because I should be somewhere else. What exactly do we do in that time?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say, right? It's easy to say, block it out, try and bring your attention back to that. But even that in itself is challenge for the mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I should say that, I mean, um, first of all, is that as soon as you notice that your mind isn't where you want it to be, you've noticed your mind isn't where you want it to be. So right away, praise yourself for noticing. Boom, first step. Because otherwise, we just kind of keep knocking ourselves down. And I wouldn't actually, recommend someone try to stay focused on a whole run. Um, I wouldn't do that. I would bring my mindful attention to the start, to the stretches at the beginning and the stretches at the end and the walk, and then, but so I think paring it down too. So that's part of the grading of it. Is it's probably not realistic for us to stay fully attentive for something like 20 minutes, but can it be for 2 minutes of it?
Mm-hmm.
So being realistic with how long we can actually stay focused on whatever we're trying to stay focused on. And I started with I suggest people pick something in their day that's like washing their hands or brushing their teeth, right? So then our minds wander, or we forget we were even supposed to pay attention when we washed our hands, but then we've noticed. That's it. As soon as you've noticed, you're off whatever train of thought you were on.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's two things that keep us from being mindful most of the time. And I struggle to think of other things really, but I'll tell you what they are. One of them is going off on trains in different directions. So that's thoughts, that's pain, that's background noise, that's an itch, whatever it is, it's something bringing us away. And the other is we're on autopilot. And we don't even notice that we did a whole series of things in our morning, for instance. So between those trains that take us off in different directions and the autopilot, that's a lot to deal with. But being gentle with ourselves, that all humans are dealing with those. And as soon as we notice we're on the train or we're on autopilot, we have that choice to step off and come back to whatever we're intending to focus on.
Yeah, I love that. And let's have a look then about with the occupational therapist who is working with their client and wants to weave more mindfulness practices into this client's life. And obviously the client, this is what they're wanting as well. What's the best way to start this conversation? What kind of conversations do you have, and where do you start with that?
Yeah. So say if the client is interested in this, I start with the beginnings of my appointments. I tend to use a short grounding exercise. I don't call it meditation. I don't call it mindfulness. I generally use the term, we can do a grounding exercise just to get us both centered, so we can get started and both be present with this. And I do see it as something that helps me be present and grounded, as well as my clients. So right away, then I'm practicing it, so I'm modeling that, and they're participating. And
so what does a grounding exercise look like? Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you want me to describe them? Do you want me to read one? What would you like?
Yeah, maybe describe one. So
describe one. Yeah. Okay. So one of them is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I ask people to just say to themselves, I say, give your voice a break, and I talk them through the whole thing. So I'm not giving all the instructions and leaving them to it, but just to quietly notice 5 things they can see, 5 things they can hear, and 5 things they can physically feel. And then we go to 4, and then we go to 3, and then we go to 2, and then we go to 1. So by the time we get to 1, it's kind of brought our focus from everything down to 1. And so it helps activate people's parasympathetic nervous systems, and it just helps people filter out all the things that are going on in our minds when we start and then calm down. And so that's kind of the first step of how I start introducing people to this. And I also don't start with the expectation that they're going to do any of this between appointments. So I feel like until there's a fair bit of buy-in, when I'm working with one-on-one clients, we just pepper it into the appointments I'm doing. So that would be a grounding exercise. I'm often, a lot of my clients have really struggled to keep up with things that need to happen in their day. So they might have several days worth of dishes when I get there. And so then we might try to make that an activity that they can bring some mindfulness to of, okay, we're going to just go at it, really notice the feeling of the water, the soap. I had a client, I had a student in the course that I teach for other OTs tell me she started doing it with ADL assessments at the hospital. So that she'd be, in the shower with clients and getting them to smell their shampoo and really feel the water and really, notice notice each step of the kind of ADL assessment that she was doing. So really bringing, as we're doing things with clients, seeing if we can experiment with making those our mindful daily activity. And then when clients are more interested in, I will do a longer mindfulness meditation, sort of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I offer to give them the recording of it, and if they would, and see if they want to plan to try it during the week between appointments. And I do then, get them to commit one way or the other. Not, well, maybe I will. Say, okay, what's your plan here? Are you actually gonna, do you want to do it, or do you want us to hold off until we meet again next week? And then I might give them, depending on the person, a tracking sheet if that's something that appeals to them.
And can you make the link between mindfulness and OT in terms of occupation and the work that we do? Why this is so important and how it can really benefit the work that we do?
Absolutely. So yeah, I said before, I think because mindfulness meditation not only is an occupation, but it's that lens. And I think a lot of the time, no matter what age of person we're working with, people have a lot on their plates often, or are occupationally deprived and have hardly anything on their plates. And being able, either way, kind of makes it hard for us to plan our day and have a lot to sort of anchors in our day. That's the word I'm looking for. So to hold on to different anchors in our day. So I find that mindfulness can be a really good way to help us to be more present at different moments in our day. And when we're more present, then that makes occupation more meaningful and more productive. Also, it's a way for all ages of people, beyond babies, but certainly because of co-regulation, we can include parents of babies in this, to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And I think that helps in all the various occupations we have in our lives, tend to activate that stress response, that sympathetic nervous system throughout the day. And having some occupation or ways of interacting in our day that helps us activate that parasympathetic nervous system and start to calm ourselves down. And it makes us more aware of all our different senses. So really, that whole sensory approach and sensory awareness, when a lot of times the adults I work with are very sort of unaware of what's going on beyond what's going on in their minds.
Right? And I can see how, if we bring our mindfulness to the occupation that we have right in front of us, to these micro moments throughout the day, like you said, even if it's just washing your hands, or while you do the dishes, or at the start of a walk, then this starts to have this compound effect. So it might start with the micro moments, and maybe it's just one during the day, and then maybe it's two, and then maybe it's three. Those micro moments of being mindful has this much bigger compound effect if we're being consistent with it, or if our clients are being consistent with it, which will have this bigger, grander effect and impact on how we show up and our lives, like our day-to-day lives, and what it is that we do, and do it with meaning and intention and awareness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And certainly there's good evidence for instance, pain, for sleep, for ADHD. There's concussions. There's a whole lot of evidence out there that it does help us when we're consistent to be able to function with these various conditions that many of our clients might be dealing with.
Well, let's dive into that. What client populations can we be using mindfulness with? I seem to think, obviously, it can be nearly any client population, because every human being will benefit from this. Are there specific populations, though, that sort of come to the top of mind that may benefit more immediately from this kind of practice?
Yeah, it does feel like really any age. And when I've taught the course for other occupational therapists, I've had people working with all ages of clients and all types of populations of clients. As I say, if it's babies, then it's really the parents you're targeting. Toddlers are naturally mindful, so it becomes more the parents that need to practice their mindfulness, so we don't kind of lose our cool when the kid is mindfully doing something we want them to be doing something else. But beyond that, and certainly the population I work with, which people with pain and people with mental health challenges and sleep issues, there's a lot of evidence, and I've seen a lot of good results with that population. But that's not the only one. I struggle to think of a population that we would work with as OTs that wouldn't benefit from this. And certainly we as OTs, being people who are with people struggling a lot of the day, can benefit from it. And I think that's the first spot to start.
Can you shine a light on the pain population? So people who are experiencing pain, how can mindfulness benefit their life?
Mm-hmm. So because pain is a stressful situation, right? It's activating our sympathetic nervous system. And so having an activity that can help us decrease that stress response and elicit the relaxation response can, when we've decreased that alarm system, then the pain alarm system isn't able to trigger us quite as much. Now, that being said, I teach an 8-week course for people with mindfulness, people with pain. And we start with the body scan meditation, which is a meditation where I ask people to bring awareness to their feet and then their legs and their knees, and we move so forth all the way through the body. Well, people have a lot of pain. So this is not going to be relaxing when they start, because what we're asking people to do in that situation is to pay attention to what is, and what is pain. So over time, what I'm getting them to do then is there's grading involved in that. So I had a woman when I was teaching it this week who said, when I do the body scan, she basically checks out from mid-thigh until shoulders. She's just doesn't remember it, doesn't hear it, not paying attention at all. And so it came to light that she has severe pain in her torso, so she was just not able to do that. So the way I suggested we go about that is, when we get to that part, is she can touch in on it and then go back to, for her feet have no pain. So go back to her feet. And then when she hears the next body part, just touch on it. You don't need to stay there, and then go back to your feet. So by doing that, hopefully over time, she can increase her awareness of what's going on between her thighs and her shoulders, which right now she has very little sensory awareness of. We don't want to throw her in there where it's so painful, but a little touch and then leave it is a way to increase that. So over time then, she's increasing her sensory awareness, which can help her with respecting her limits, because now she is actually checking in and has a sense of what her limits are.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting, because I wasn't sure whether the mindfulness practice would relate to the pain and focusing in and bringing awareness to the area of pain, or whether it was simply bringing mindfulness practice to whatever it is that they are doing, or both, or a combination of both. So that's really interesting. Yeah, thank you. Okay, in terms of practical tools, so if OTs are wanting to use practical tools in their practice, if they haven't done like a meditation or a mindfulness course before, or and they're just wanting to learn more for their own life and want something handy that they can have, is there any sort of tools or practices that they can be doing to support that?
Absolutely. There are a ton of resources out there. So I've put together a couple that I can direct people to and give you the links to so I've made a pamphlet on doing the body scan meditation, the meditation I just described. So that is available on my website. So people can, under free resources, people can download that, and that gives a step-by-step instruction. It's a handout that you can print off and give to your clients. And it's got a link to an audio version of the body scan if that's something people want to start with. I've also got... Is
this something they could use in their practice, or is this just for personal use?
They can use it in their practice.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's got my name on stuff, but that's fine. They can use it and they can give it out. They can give it out to their clients for sure. Yeah. I'd ask people not to, put it on their websites or their
no. Yeah, no, I just meant like use it in
their
sessions. Yeah.
They can definitely use it in their sessions. That's what it's for, to make things a little easier for OT. So it's something that that's just introducing that practice, the body scan practice. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So that's a good start. But to start with, they can get a copy of that and practice it themselves. Certainly use that with their clients. I've got I've got a Facebook group for OTs where I put a lot of the grounding exercises. So I do those as Facebook Lives, and people can come and go through previous Facebook Lives and learn a whole bunch of those grounding exercises I start my appointments with. So that's a good way to kind of get introduced to some bite-sized practices.
And it's mindfulness for OTs?
It's Mindful OTs.
Mindful OTs.
Yeah, Mindful OTs.
Great.
Yeah, and I can give you the link to put in the
Fantastic.
notes if you have those as well. Yeah. So those would be 2 spots to start for sure, and then there's lots more to take it deeper than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm sure if anyone just jumps on their phone and searches anything mindfulness or meditation related, there will be, like you said, like too many probably to choose from. I know there is
absolutely.
For meditation, there's the One Giant Mind. I don't know if you've tried that one before, but there are so many out there. Yeah,
Smiling Minds. That's an Australian one. Mm-hmm. That's a good one, and it's got good ones for kids as well. I mean, I've got tons of books that have different, meditation audio guides. So a good one with kids, I find, is Sitting Still Like a Frog. And there's one for parents, and that's meditations for kids and their parents. So if people are parents themselves, even if they don't work in pediatrics, that's one that they can use, at home, so they can start trying out the meditations without having to figure out what to do with their kids while they're trying out the meditations.
Yeah.
And Breathe Through This is the sequel. That's the one I'm reading right now. That's for parents of teenagers.
Awesome. Are there any other books that you recommend? Like, what are the books that have changed?
Yeah, any book by Tara Brach I would recommend.
Okay.
Yeah. She's got, and John Kabat-Zinn. Yeah,
awesome.
I mentioned there at the beginning. Yeah.
Cool.
Those would be good ones.
Awesome. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about that we haven't touched on in terms of mindfulness?
No, I think just the idea that it's often the most helpful for us as healthcare providers and primarily as OTs to build a practice ourselves before we turn and bring this to our clients. We can certainly recommend, our clients look into this, but I think there's huge benefits to ourselves. And, as a profession, there's a pretty high attrition rate to helping professions. So learning ways to help ourselves stay present and avoid burnout ourselves is a key one. So I think that benefit there, and then going to how can it benefit your own client population is probably the next thing.
Absolutely. And I think when we understand it from the lived experience, we are able to share more deeply. Like, we are able to, and also able to connect and understand the challenges and the barriers that they might come up against when they're implementing these sorts of practices, because it's probably, possible that we've encountered the same thing as well. So I think it just also gives that piece of empathy, and we can listen from that lived experience lens.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because I teach other OTs, right? So then I've had, I recommend a meditation to them, and people come back and say, oh, that was a lot. That was a 20-minute meditation you recommended doing every day this week. I can't believe I've been asking my clients to do that for years. It's really hard to get that into your day. So it's interesting that, that an OT would laugh about this and say, yeah, I've been recommending this kind of thing to my clients for ages, and I hadn't actually tried finding 20 minutes in my day to do this until last week. Yes. And then, she realized that that's a challenge. And she's not like, it's not as if this happened to one OT. This is true for a lot of us. But
yes, yeah, bringing mindfulness, to the homework that we're giving out.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay, let's head to the 3 rapid fire questions, Sarah.
Absolutely.
So the first one is, in one sentence, how do you describe OT?
So I think OT is a profession where we're helping people engage in whatever it is they need to do or want to do in the day, and helping them live their fullest life.
Love it. Number 2, what's one healthy lifestyle habit listeners can implement today?
Prioritize sleep.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes. I need more of it. Number 3, if you could only offer one piece of advice to OTs, what would it be?
Say, put on your own oxygen masks first.
Yes. So come to Sarah. and she's going to teach you all about mindfulness and meditation, mindfulness, and putting on our own oxygen mask first. That's so true. And I think we so often forget that. And particularly because we are usually OTs are very helping. Like, we're always wanting to help and do good, and we're the empaths, and it can be very draining on us. So if we haven't filled our cup, if we aren't filled with the light and joy and positivity and in this really good, healthy space physically and mentally and spiritually, then it is really hard to show up for our clients and serve the people that we want to serve. So for everyone who wants to find out where you are, like on Facebook or your website, can you just let us know how everyone can contact you?
Absolutely. So my website is sarahgoodot.ca. So that, the CA part might trip people up, but and it's Sarah with an H, and good, just as it sounds. So sarahgoodot.ca. And on there, you'll see my email address and phone number and so forth. And on there as well, you can get some free resources and see my blog as well. And also information on courses and programs that I offer for OTs. And if you want to connect on Facebook, then I've got a Facebook group, so it's Mindful OTs. And so I'll give you the link to put down for that one. And I'm happy to connect with people from my Facebook. I've got a Facebook page for Sarah Good Occupational Therapy as well, so people can find me that way.
And you also have an Instagram?
I do have an Instagram, yes. Sarah Good OT.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we're all over it. We'll find you somewhere.
Excellent. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate that. And for me personally, I feel like I need to probably step into that mindfulness meditation, because I haven't created that space for me to do that. And I am one of those people that's go, go, go. And I will always try to be intentional with my awareness and with what I'm doing, but not carving out that space and that time for me. So I think everything that you shared was really valuable for me personally, but also how I can use it within my practice, specifically with kids that I work with. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. It was an honor to be on your podcast. I really enjoyed listening to it, and I'm so impressed with this whole movement that you've built, and in quite a short period of time. So thank you very much for including me on it.
Thanks, Sarah.